I'm 8 years old, carrying a long, thin, flexible stick. We're walking down a dirt road. We're in rural Zimbabwe. Ahead of us are 45 cattle that we're taking to the dip on our weekly pilgrimage. For those that don't know what a dip is, you can imagine a pool of water with chemicals, pesticides, and the animals would just, swim across, and pretty much they're treated for ticks and other parasites. For 8-year-old me, that is not the highlight of this trip. The highlight, it's not even the highlight for anybody. The farm workers are just going there and just having to do what they need to do. The highlight for me is the little bit of money that my grandmother, we call Gogo, had given me to go and spend at the general store while the farm workers are doing the, cattle dipping. And on this hot Zimbabwean day, I'm looking forward to having a nice pastry and a cold soft drink that I would enjoy. I get to the general store, we're hanging out, farm workers are over there doing their thing, and it's a hub of activity, the village talk. One of the things I hear is kind of concerning. The latest addition to our team, our farm hands, they were talking about him, and they said he was a thief. He had stolen from the previous farm, which was in the area. Not only had he stolen, but when he was discovered, that thief beat up the farmer. And I'd seen the farmer, he had a black eye. And I was kind of concerned because my grandmother was the new farmer that he was working for. My grandfather had long passed away before I was even born. I'd never met him. And my grandmother was running this farm. So when I got back to the homestead, to the farm, I pulled my grandmother to the side and I said, Gogo, I heard some concerning things. And she said, what is it, Tinashe? That is my full name. What is it, Tinashe? And I said, Gogo, the new guy, they said he's a thief. And my grandmother said, he's not a thief, Tinashe. He was hungry, and he took some stuff. Unconvinced, I said, but Gogo, he punched the farm owner. I saw his eye, it was swollen. And my Gogo said, Tinashe, that same farm owner, when your grandfather passed away, said, no woman will ever be a successful farmer, and instead I should go and join his concubine and be a part of his harem amongst his plural wives. If I was not a saved woman, I would punch him myself. See, that thief, that violent thief, worked our farm for many years after. And he grew to become a farm manager there. He was one of the most loyal people that we had. Years later, after he had passed on, I moved on and gone and worked. He got married and then gone and lived in a different community. My grandmother had passed away. He came back and he spoke. And he shared. And he said, that woman changed my life. Vaindiwona, it means she saw me. She saw me. She saw beyond what people labeled me. She gave me an opportunity. She believed in me. That's what she meant. That's what he meant. She saw me. See, that stuck with me when I later on moved to the United States, came here as a student. While I was going to school, I was looking for just a job that would help me pay for the bills and everything else. And I joined a company called QLI, Quality Living Incorporated, QLI. It's in Omaha, brain and spinal cord injury rehab, center of excellence. Voted best place to work in Omaha 8 times. Entered 8 times. It's an amazing place, people. And QLI has so many amazing things about it. Not only the lives that we're touching day in, day out, but it's the work that happens is because of the amazing people that show up day in, day out. And the thing that I found when I first got to the United States was they saw me. They believed in me. They invested in me. And that is imperative. How do you take your biases and you move them to the side and you say, I'm going to get to know this person. I'm going to take the time to understand who they are, what makes them tick. I want to talk about three things that I see quite a lot at QLI. Jay talked about leadership, and one of the things that, before I talk about those three things, is that leadership, and Jay alluded to this, is not a noun, it's a verb. Leadership is not a noun, it's a verb. It's actions. What are you doing day in, day out? And it's not about you, he said that. It's about the other person on the other side of the table. It's about the other person that you can empower. And anyone, everyone in here can and should be a leader because it's about the actions, whether you have a title or not. As a matter of fact, some of the better leaders that I've been around have no title at all. So I'm going to talk about three things that I see at QLI that could even impact a little bit about what we're talking about, the do-good movement. One of them is pride. And I'm not talking about the vanity type of pride. I'm talking about the pride when you're proud of something and it gives you some sort of esteem. The other one I'm going to talk about is decision making. How do you make decisions in your organizations? And the third one is about success and how we invest in people day in, day out. So I'll talk about the pride thing. When I first joined QLI, my father had since passed away. He passed away while I was in the United States. I remember families of the individuals that we serve day in, day out, just talking about how maybe I've made an impact with one of their loved ones. The CEO of the organization wrote a note to my mother in Zimbabwe and said, "This is how your son is impacting lives every single day." My mother still has that letter. And I think she took extra pride in it because I was the most mischievous of our six siblings, and she said, "Okay, I think he's doing okay." I was the only one who was sent to boarding school because I was that mischievous one. And so she kept that letter and says, "This is amazing of what my son is doing there." That's how you create pride. You can do that even by taking just a quick note and jotting it and saying, "I saw something amazing." In your organizations, in your communities, in your families, are you taking the time to just recognize the other person, to create a sense of esteem, a sense of pride within them? The other piece is we talk about how leaders create an environment where team members believe and know that they're successful at work, but they are also successful in life. We create an environment where we're helping people be successful at work and at home. How can we do that? How can we continue to figure out ways? It starts with the relationship. Do you know the people that you're working with day in, day out? Are you connected with them? Because you can certainly talk about, "Oh, I'm going to help you figure out this code. Oh, I'm going to help you figure out whatever's going on over here in our businesses." But unless that person is successful in their personal life, they're not going to show up and be 100% and do well in the organization. And I can guarantee you, they're not going to be loyal. So when you're seeing the idea of being successful at work and in life, I think one of the things that everything I'm saying here, we have 450 people that work at QLI, and I'm giving you my testimony on the things that I've witnessed, the things that I've experienced. I've built a coaching business within the organization, and it's been able to go outside of the organization. I've been able to build a real estate organization, small, and it's benefiting team members within QLI, where affordable housing is an issue, and we've been able to house individuals from our teams. And that has been supported and endorsed by QLI day in, day out. So are we taking the time to help people be successful outside of work? Are we building those relationships? Are we taking the obstacles, like Jay said, out of the way to make sure that they can do well and better? You don't have to get them to build a business, but sometimes it's a matter of, gas is expensive. Let me figure out what's going on in your life. Childcare is a hassle. Let me figure out what's happening. Team members do this every single day, where you find people saying, oh, this person is moving, they have an issue, and a few of them get together, and that person is moved. People that don't even work with that person laterally. But just because I heard that somebody had a situation happening, I jumped in and I helped them. The third part I'm going to talk about is about decisions and decision making. How do you make decisions in your organizations, in your families, in your communities? At QLI, we say open discussion and dialogue is a predicate to decision making. Open discussion and dialogue, which means you have to have a safe environment where people can say three things. One of three things, all of three things. One, I don't understand what you're saying. Help me understand. Two, and in most organizations, or some organizations, you're seen as, well, you might be dumb. I don't understand. What do you mean you don't understand? We've explained it. We've given you whatever the memos. No. Do they understand? And are they comfortable saying, I don't understand? The second thing that has to exist in that part of decision making is people have to feel safe to say, I don't know. Do you feel safe anytime? Even if it's something that you're a subject matter expert on, do you feel comfortable saying, I don't know? Or are you afraid to look stupid or incompetent? We want to create spaces in our organizations, in our communities, where people can feel comfortable saying, I don't know. The last thing that has to exist is before a decision is made, people have to be able to say, I disagree. And feel safe to say, I disagree. Are you comfortable? Are people around you comfortable disagreeing with you? Because if they're not, you're not going anywhere as an organization. You're not going anywhere as a community. You're not going anywhere as a family. I said I'm African. I'm going to give you a little story. There was a colonizer. Went into a little village. He had with him a basket, and some of you have heard the story before. Basket full of goods. Little shoes, candy, clothes, sweets. You know, the things that little kids like. And so he asked this village elder and said, village elder, can you gather all the children? And the village elder said, okay, I'll gather all the children. They put the kids on one end. And he said, well, I don't have enough for all the kids, but what we're going to do is we're going to put something on this end, and here's where we're going to put the basket. The kids' eyes were big and everything, and they were like, oh, yeah, that's amazing stuff in there. And then he drew a line, and he said, we're going to have a little race. Whoever who crosses wins the little basket, the basket full of things. Colonizer says, on your mark, get set, go. The most amazing thing happened that he had never seen. The most amazing thing happened. All the children, big, tall, chubby, athletic, even the one that had a lame leg, joined hands and walked together across the finish line. And they all got to play with what they had in there. And they all shared what was in there. And the colonizer said, village elder, what is this? The elder said, this is Ubuntu. And he said, Ubu what? Ubuntu. I am because you are. I am because we are. If you leave with anything today, I know we talked about something that you leave with. If you leave with anything today, and I'm looking at faces right now, and it's like maybe you ain't feeling me. I said, I am because you are. Repeat that. I am. I am because. Yes, and I am because we are. That is Ubuntu. That is humanity. And without Ubuntu, without humanity, without we are, I can tell you that during the pandemic, QLI would have struggled. Without pride, without ownership, without doing the right things, we would have struggled. Lots of, you've heard it. Lots of organizations had to close up their doors. How many skilled nursing facilities, for example, shut their doors in Nebraska because they didn't have people to work? How many? Too many. I think it's something that was amazing that what I saw at QLI was people stepping up and doing some incredible things, right? While we were all in PPE, the team members, the direct team members who are facing the residents day in, day out, they're in there in PPE, sweating and everything. Masks, all that stuff, goggles, all that stuff. We saw our accounting team. Instead of saying, we are going remote, they said, we're here to walk across that finish line with you. That's powerful. Social workers, we did not go remote. We stayed. And we made a difference. And because of that, we're stronger. We didn't see any nurses quitting and jumping and saying, wow, they're paying double in New York City, they're paying double over here. They stayed because of who we are. We are. So, as we're talking about do good, do more good, and the movement, as we're talking about change in our communities, in our organizations, in our homes, there's always this idea of, yes, it seems like a good idea. I bet you Jay does that. I bet you Graham does that. Goes in and talks to organizational leaders and says, this is what we're trying to do. And they say, that's a great idea. And then they say, okay, this is how we do it. And they say, yeah, don't want it that bad, right? How many times do you hear that, Graham? Too many times. Don't want it that bad. What's the gap? I'm African. I'm going to give you another analogy, another story. Yet another colonizer goes into a village, getting a tour from a tour guide. Beautiful village. All of a sudden, he sees this majestic beast, powerful, an elephant, big tusks, big trunk, humongous. It's right there, glorious. Majestic being. All of a sudden, he sees that there's a rope, small rope, tied around its front foot. And every time that the elephant would walk, get to the end of the rope, it would stop. The rope was just tied to a stake in the ground. Then it would walk, feel the tension, and then it would stop. Colonizer says, you seem to have leashed this majestic being. How did this happen? How did this happen? The village guy says, you take a calf, an elephant calf, before it becomes a bull. You tie it, much like this one is, except it's smaller, it's weaker. It fights, it tries to get away. It doesn't, it can't. It tires, and it stops. It stops fighting. And as it grows, it feels tension, and it stops. And it feels tension, and it stops. It feels friction, and it doesn't go on. We are being informed by previous trauma, by previous things that people have said to us day in, day out. What have we heard about business? Friedman said, the sole responsibility for business is to do what? Maximize profits, ensure holder value. And that's what we've taken and said, this is what we're going to do. And then we stop. See, if we continue with that same mentality, when we look at it in the same way, I'd say if corporations were humans, they'd actually be sociopaths then. We got to stop this. We need to let and walk away and realize our power and just keep on going. Where we have friction, we have traction. That's what we have to understand. No friction, no traction. So Graham, as you're finding that friction of why can't we go forward, just understand you're doing the right thing because we're finding traction. We're going to pull away from what has informed us, informed businesses wrongly in the last decades, millennia, whatever it is. And we can do better. We can do more good. So I will leave with these words from one of my favorite artists, Robert Nesta Marley, Bob Marley. He said, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery, for none but ourselves can free our minds." Thank you.